What's going on, team? Welcome back. Strong Life Podcast. This is Zach Evanesh. And in this episode, we'll be talking about in-season training. It's a topic that I usually like to cover at the beginning of each sports season. And if you've been listening to the Strong Life Podcast for a while, you've likely heard these tips, but I have to remind myself that my goal is to reach one more parent, to reach one more coach. I don't know how many athletes are listening to this. They're probably watching TikTok and shorter videos to get their content, their information. But I've been really thinking about this that I feel like parents need to now start coming into the world of strength and conditioning to start helping their kids to combat the quote, I don't have time, unquote, or we don't have the time to train. And I had this conversation recently with Kelly Story. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm going to have my friend, Jeremy Hartman, world-class powerlifting coach, world-class strength and conditioning coach. He was a speaker at last year's Underground Strength Con, and people were just blown away with his knowledge. So he'll be hopping on. We'll be discussing best practices for in-season strength training. And if you're new here, make sure you head on over to zachstrength.com, subscribe. And those of you who love the episode, leave a review, and I will send you a gift, one of our downloadable training courses. I will hook you up. And then thanks to our partner, Defend USA, link below, 20% off code ZACH. That's compression and recovery gear. So what happens with in-season training is the way I could really explain it in simple terms is think about when you were in high school and you took a foreign language. I had Spanish, some people took French, Italian, Latin, but once school ended, most of us did not speak that language for 8, 9, maybe 10 weeks. And so middle of June, school is out. We get back to school in early September. We start speaking or trying to speak our other language, and we're lost. We're at 70%, maybe even less of what we once had. And if you look at the time frame, it's very similar to the time frame of a sports season and when playoffs happen. So a sports season lasts about 12 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, depending on how far your team makes it or how far you make it as an individual. And so when you skip that strength training because you say you're too busy, which nobody truly is, there's always time to train. It's like the foreign language. You lose the skill of strength. You lose the nervous system fire, the nervous system power. And the worst thing is you need to be at your best at the end of the season because it's playoffs. But it's just like that foreign language. You skipped it for a month and then 2 months, and now you don't know how to speak that language. Well, that's how your body will respond. And then, of course, the one thing that's hard to measure, but we know it happens, is the athlete loses his or her confidence because they've stopped doing the very thing that gave them the advantage. And what we've come to realize is travel sports are now happening during a sport season. Hockey players have travel hockey during the same season. Soccer players will go and do private soccer training with a coach after soccer practice. Same thing with wrestling. And so they're filling and actually overfilling the bucket of skill and sport work. And then the bucket that needs strength, power, muscle building, joint strength is empty. Okay. Let's get our boy Jeremy Hartman in here. Okay. Connecting with our guy, Jeremy Hartman. Make sure you guys are following him on Instagram. Here we go, the master. All right. I already did a little bit of an intro. And Jeremy, I think this is going to be probably multiple times you and I have covered this topic on a podcast. What I prefaced before you hopped on is every season I like to do the in season strength topic because it seems like there's this group of parents and athletes who say, I don't have time. And anytime you, myself, and Mark Garrett are chatting it up, we talk about what our best athletes are doing, and they're always strength training in season. So I'm wondering if you have a recent story that like could fire people up about in season strength training with your athletes.
Yeah, let's just talk about one of my best wrestlers of all right here is Silas Stitz. He's got a full ride at Kent State University, Division I wrestling, finished third in the state. Just went to the junior national duels, went 7-0, and then he became a junior national All-American, finished eighth in the nation. And we were just chatting about stuff because he was talking to his coach. He goes, no one in the nation is stronger than me. No one in the state was stronger than me. And he goes, man, he goes, he's just looking around at some of the other people I have or some of the other wrestlers that just they don't show up consistently. And I said, there was no matter what you had going on, tournaments on the weekend, your schedule you had to plan for, different stuff that was coming up. You always made it a priority. We were in here twice a week. Plus, he was in the weights class at his school during the school day.
Oh
And
yeah.
I said, didn't matter the wrestling practice where we're at. Obviously, we tried to get your lifting done earlier in the week because I knew you had to cut weight and get ready for tournaments and stuff later on. But you were always consistently doing that. I said, the day you went to Fargo, you had to catch a bus. I said, you were in here till 4 o'clock. I said, you had to be on the bus at 5 o'clock. I said, you went home, ate real quick, got on the bus, and ended up traveling all the way to Fargo. I said, the day you came back the next morning, I mean, you only had 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I said, you were back here in the weight room again training. I'm like, it's no mistake about how prepared you are. Like everything during the season, you always had it planned out. During the Christmas breaks, I said, you're in here, 4 or 5 times a week because you didn't have school. You just had practice. That was it. Obviously he's got privates and stuff that he does. He trains with the IU team out here in Indiana University, but he was just consistent all the time. And Zach, he looked around and he goes, and you and I were just chatting about this. He goes, Coach, he goes, why are all these other wrestlers? He goes, I look around, they're always injured. They're getting taped up. They're in the athletic training room, before practice, after
Falling
practice.
apart.
Yeah, he goes, he goes, I got bumps and bruises. Yeah, Fargo tore me up a little bit. But he goes, I bounced back pretty easy and we're ready to train again. I said, dude, we built a suit of armor around you. Okay. I'm like, you're wrestling the toughest guys. Of course, you're going to get beat up, but you're fine to go. Like a few days off, or I had to modify a few workouts when you came back, and we are kind of full swinging again within a week.
Yeah, if you're always ready, you never have to get ready. That's a famous quote. And then listening to you talking about Silas, the quote of success leaves clues is profound in all the things that Silas is doing. And one thing people may not know is Coach Garrett said to me when he was going to high school in Indiana in the 80s, he said they already had full-time strength coaches. In New Jersey, it's still very rare to have a full-time qualified strength coach in the school. So Silas is lifting at school. Then he's training with you extra. And what I've always noticed about the best is it's not either or, it's and. I'm training at school and I'm training extra with a coach or extra on my own. So in New Jersey, we have a lot of my son wants to train with his friends. That's fine. He should do both. Go and do a little bit of bodybuilding work. But what I've seen is when they do all that bodybuilding work. I mean, I said I did that in the early 90s, and I was the poster boy for great looking physique, but no strength, no power, and very susceptible to injury. And I really just keep coming back to the common theme is the best athletes have a pretty good volume of work and they don't really do I'm here, I'm gone, I'm back, I'm disappearing. I don't think you need to be an expert to understand that that is a completely ineffective system, so to speak. The most effective system is to consistently show up one way or another, and had this conversation recently with Kelly Starrett. He said his daughter was so busy with water polo that they were end up doing 20-minute workouts in their garage. So it might be like front squats and pull-ups. He's like, but we were doing a lot of frequency of those kind of mini workouts. And this generation, it said that by the time they die, will have spent a cumulative 10 years of their life on the phone. So I really suggest find time to be at your best in athletics and health rather than the time on TikTok and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, Zach, another good story. I got one of my Division I beach volleyball players here. Zach, she's 5'7". She's easily one of the shortest girls out there, and she knows that she's got to get faster, and she's known that since 10th grade. And she made a mistake, and Sophie Sable and I, that's when I have her taught to athletes. She goes, she didn't strength train the one time during her junior year. She did a little bit and stuff, and then by the end of the season, Zach, she told me, she goes, I lost my first step quickness. Her shoulders were getting banged up, rotator cuff and everything from playing, regular volleyball for the school.
Yep.
And so we talked about that. She never made that mistake again. She was in here consistently. She just did a camp. She had to go all the way back. She goes to University of Houston Christian School.
Yep.
And so it was like she went and did a camp there, and they were doing 2 days. And guess what she was doing in the middle of that, Zach? She went and talked to the strength coaches, the football guys, and she went in and trained. And her volleyball
Yes.
coach is like, He goes, you're the only athlete that I can ever think of that is going in on their own. Again, it was a quick workout. I had her doing about 30, 40 minutes, just like you said, 20 minutes with Kelly was doing with his daughter. But it was 30, 40-minute workout. We got a main strength thing, and then we got 2 assisted exercises. We went hard, and then we were done. And she goes, Coach, like, that my speed, my athleticism, my strength, my endurance, by the end of the season, I was healthy. She goes, I'm on varsity this year. So she goes, this is what I have to do at 5'7" to play against these other girls who are, 5'10", 6'2", 6'4".
Very
And
tall.
again, there's no secret to it. He goes, I've never had anybody like that. And she goes, well, I'm going to be a varsity player. I'm going to be a point scorer for the team this year. I'm a Division I athlete on a scholarship. She got her scholarship upped. There's a reason why. It's her work ethic, and you just got to show up and get the work done.
She's in a sport where a lot of girls have a genetic advantage of
Yep.
height.
Yep.
And I trained volleyball today, and I told those girls, I go, your body, I said to them, let's try to break down how many times do you think you have to jump during a game in practice? 100 plus reps. I go, okay. Now add that up across a week. Let's just say 500 jumps a week. Now we're at 2,000 jumps a month, and sports season is 10 to 12 weeks. So we're looking at thousands of jumps. If your legs, knees, hips, ankles are not durable, they will break. And then I said, if you're a blocker on the front row, your shoulders must be extremely stable. Your lats have to be strong to block. And I said, if your body is not strong, I always say you don't need to be an expert here. I really feel like we need to empower parents to start understanding strength training so they understand how to help their kids, because parents will take, kid will go to volleyball high school practice and then go to volleyball club. Well, that bucket is overflowing with sports skill work. The bucket of strength and health and building muscle and building confidence is empty. We must fill the bucket, or so to speak, put that puzzle into the puzzle to complete it, right? You don't want missing pieces of the puzzle. Just does not work.
Zach, what you just said there, you and I were chatting, Mark Garrett, Kale Voinovich, he's going to be fighting for a starting spot this year, University of Iowa Wrestling. He's going to be starting for 149, fighting for a spot. And Tom Brands, Olympic gold medalist, 3-time NCAA champ, world champ, head coach out there. He was giving that same speech. He told the guys, like, if you need more mat time, you need to schedule more mat time. If you need more conditioning, tell us, we'll put you through a workout. If you need more weight room work, you need to tell us and what you need to do. And Kale, again, he's 19 years old, Zach. He's going against some 24, 25-year-old men.
That's right.
And he talked to Tom Brands, and he goes, I need more weight room work. He goes, I can get down shots. I can't finish them. My defense is good, but it's not good enough where these guys can keep driving through me. So Kale and I came up with a plan, and he's lifting, not the 2 or 3 that the team is. He's lifting 4, sometimes 5 days a week, because like you just said, that's his weakness. And you got an Olympic gold medalist wrestler, one of the best in the United States of all time, head coach of Iowa, they're top 3 every single year in the nation, telling those guys, you need to get what you need to get out of this. And Kale's weakness was the strength train right now. He goes, conditioning, I'm good. I'm getting it on shots. I'm just not strong enough to finish them. So we came up with a plan, Zach, and he's lifting 4 to 5 times a week at University of Iowa right now.
This I love. First of all, what's funny is people are like, oh, Iowa needs a new coach because they're not national champs. People don't understand the depth of college wrestling now, that some teams like Iowa and Penn State, about a third to a half of their team compete world level and are front runners for our Olympic spot. The other thing that's interesting is you said, Tom Brand said, what do you need? Not what do you want to do? Meaning, Jeremy, sometimes I hear from parents of athletes who are not varsity starters, who are not qualifying for states or all conference, and they don't want to strength train. They want more sports skill. Well, like Coach Brand says, where are you struggling? If you are struggling with strength, you need the strength. If you are struggling technically, you're probably not a starter at Iowa, one of the best teams in the country. And so it is, what do you need? So sometimes even a coach will say to me, we don't have the time to train. Well, what do you guys need to help your team succeed more? And I also believe that coaches, whether it's a sport coach or a strength coach, but the sport coach has a obligation, a duty to do what's best for the athletes. And so if your team and your athletes, individuals, need strength training, you must find a way to organize it. I don't know any strength coaches who don't want to help. If anything, strength coaches sometimes get pushed away from a sport coach who will say, hey, we're going to do what we always did, or we go and do, what I used to do 20, 30 years ago.
Yep.
Strength coaches like us are always evolving because sports have evolved. And I love the what do you need? And so sometimes I'm in shock, if we go down the wrestling lane, a wrestler who hasn't even qualified for states will not strength train. Well, hey, man, your plan is not working. You actually need to do, our best wrestlers always strength trained in season, usually twice a week, and they did not jump around to many clubs. They had one. They stuck to a system, of training. And so today, I think the ADD of getting various coaches is no different than doing this. I'm watching this video. I'm watching that video. I'm going to this coach. Now I'm going to that coach. It's very hard for a coach to help an athlete if that athlete is going to all these different places. And so when I listen to your best athletes, I hear stories of you training them for years, not just a few months.
Yep.
You develop them.
Well, Zach, you look at all my athletes that graduated high school. Every single one says, I wish I would have started this earlier. Imagine if I would have started this in sixth grade instead of eighth grade. Imagine if I would have came to you in eighth grade instead of 10th grade. Nobody's ever graduated and said, man, I started strength training too early. They all say, man, I wish I had another year or two. Or, man, I wish I would have discovered this earlier. Man, I wish I would have gotten involved or known about this earlier. Nobody ever says the opposite. And the same thing when they get done with college sports too. Like it's brutal because again, you're putting you got some of these 14-year-old kids who are going against 19-year-old men, and parents are afraid to strength train, but you're going to put them on the mat or on the football field or in a combat sport, or I don't even care, varsity volleyball against an 18, 19-year-old girl, smacking it, right in their face with everything. I mean, you want to talk about injury prevention, that's the way it is. And the same thing, now you get into college, now you're an 18-year-old kid, or like Kale, 19 years old, going against a 25-year-old guy, on the wrestling mat with everything. You've got to strength train and you've got to keep that up, man.
Yes. The a bit what we look at is how do we protect the athlete? And I would never say, listen, the best thing you could do is skip strength training and be weaker. That will help you. I would never say that. I would never say, hey, the best thing you could do is skip all the special strength training we do and go lay down on machines, touch your phone after every set. And so sometimes I feel bad when I have to tell parents, stopping strength training is not good. Your son, your daughter has to be here. But I also have to remind myself, my duty is to protect their kid and to educate the parents. And so I need to tell them that's not a good idea. It's not, because I'm seeing so many injuries and it doesn't slow down. There's a girl at my high school who's tore her ACL a third time, one, then the other, and then the other one. I mean, to me, that is a broken model of training. And it's quite, if I want to analyze it as somebody who doesn't know anything, lots and lots of sport, no time for strength training, inadequate nutrition, body will break down. And now I want to look at it deeper. A college coach is not recruiting a kid who's had multiple surgeries because they know that once you get to college and the season is longer than high school, you're not going to be able to withstand it. You're not going to make it. You might be a great kid, you might have great skill, but they need you to be at your best when it's playoffs, which is the end of the season. So if I stop strength training or I do my own thing, by the end of the season, I am at 70% maybe of what I once was. I'm trying to be at my best for playoffs. Why would I enter at 70%? That's like a just a in non-intelligent way of looking at being at your best. So I know you got to go. You're training a group right now. What do you see as the answer to this? I'm too busy to train in season. Is there an answer? Who do we need to help to educate them more and find a way to do it?
It doesn't. It absolutely has to come from the parents because Silas's dad could have easily. The guy was running around, dropping one kid off, dropping the other kid off, coming back and picking him up. He could easily say we didn't have time for that. So we built into that him early on with everything, and he saw what he needed because Silas was so skinny and small when he first came in. That was a must. Brooke Kaufman, one of my college All Americans in the high jump. Brooke's mom, when she got halfway through the season, Zach, she had a broken pelvis from the year before. Didn't really strength train. Times weren't going anywhere on the hurdles. Her jumps weren't getting any better. And usually parents, what do? They kind of, oh, we'll start after the season. We'll let them get through the
Yes.
season. When I talked to her mom, I said, bring her in now. I said, we've got, it was like 6, 7 weeks left of the season. I said, we're going to get some. I said, I can't promise you anything, but I said, we're going to get the best out of her. We're going to get the most. And she was in my weight room the next day. Her mom said, no, nothing else is working. Your times are, they're going, they're going up. They're disimproving. Your jumps are not getting any better. What do we have to lose? In a 6, 7 week, Zach, she got the confidence up. That groin injury that was still nagging her started to go away. They're getting
Yep.
more confidence. Her hurdles, they stuck her in lane 1 in regionals. Okay, that means like, good luck. You're probably not going to get out. They were hoping for a top 5 finish. She ended up winning the regional championships, qualifying for state. Again, because we got that strength training done. I had a couple months with her to get her ready. And I told her, like, hey, we're obviously we need to get out of sectionals, which I knew she was going to get out of there with her times and her jumps. But I said, we're really preparing you for regionals and hopefully state. And she had the best season ever. Nagging hamstring injuries were gone. Her jumps had improved. Her times were down. And she qualified for state in 2 different events when her mom could have easily said, we'll wait till the end of the season. No, she asked
Yes.
me. We had a family friend. And look what happened ever since then. Brooke bought into what we were doing. And obviously the next year we went and placed at state and got a very good scholarship with everything. But it came from the parents that, no, we're not making excuse. No, this isn't working. Hey, I got to drop my kid off. Hey, I got to pick my kid up in 1 hour, Coach Hartman, whatever you need to do. But that has to be instilled in them early on. And the parents need to see that. Because like you said, I've got some really good wrestlers in here. We got the Fargo 1600 champion in here. Again, the guy had surgery on his ankle. He's in here training, a couple days later, only because his doctor finally released him a little bit to do upper body. And I tell my parents, look at the kids that are in here. Look at the ones that are winning consistently, not the ones like you said. Because I had a couple wrestlers whose parents were like, hey, it's a 20-minute drive. We can't get him there. Hey, he's got class. He's just going to do this. I'm like, but look at what all the other good ones are
Yeah.
doing. They weren't great athletes. They were good. And now they're great.
Good for her parents for identifying you're you got a broken pelvis, your hamstring is hurt. Why does it hurt? Because the sport is too much for your muscles that are not strong enough and durable enough. That's how we look at it. And I tell parents, I go, listen, I'm not talking to you as a strength coach. You reminded me when I was coaching at Rutgers, it was about an hour away. So I'd go there in the morning, coach, drive home, work. Then I would pick up my daughter 5 minutes early from school to beat the traffic. Why? Tennis was another hour away. I'm back in the car. I drop her off at tennis. Where did I go? 15, 20 minutes away to my other gym to coach for an hour, pick up my daughter, come back, dinner, and then she'd go to my gym. So I was putting in 4 hours a day. I try to tell parents I am with you. And so when it's too much, you have to get to a point where you say, am I looking for convenience or am I looking for the best? And if you're lucky, which is super rare, conveniently, you might find a great sport and a great strength coach. It's quite rare. And if you want excellence, you will usually have to get uncomfortable in the driving and whatnot. But it's a decision that the parents have to make, and it's a decision that the kid has to make, and also understand that, hey, my mom and dad are supporting me to do some high level stuff here. I need to really take this seriously and take my nutrition seriously and do all the things that support it. But
Yeah,
it
but Zach,
sounds like
yeah.
success leaves clues again.
Even when you started that with Summer Evanesh, like I remember the video you posted, she's out there hitting, tennis balls off the garage during COVID.
That's
You
right.
told me there was a couple times when she was up at 5 a.m. You just gave her a few things to do before school that she had to get some type of training in.
She
So I
did
remember the one time.
training before school.
Yep, yep. And again, because you built that into her early on, like, hey, I'm going to get you where you need to be. We're not going to make excuses. Hey, it's COVID. Oh well, here's a garage door. Here's a tennis. Here's a tennis ball. Here's a racket. We're going to get this done. And your daughter's going to be playing great at Bucknell University next year with everything. It's no secret. You made no excuses to get her where she needed to be. She got her strength training done when she needed to. COVID happened. All right, well, here's an area I can use. I'm going to use it. And lo and behold, she was a top tennis player around. And now she's got a great opportunity here at Bucknell coming up.
When people would be like, "Oh, I heard your daughter is so great at tennis," I always just said she works very hard. But
Yes.
what people don't realize, because it sounds like bragging, is she started doing all this in her diapers.
Yep.
During COVID, I never said, go do this, go do that. She'd go out running. She would go to these tennis courts and play against the wall. And I remember I'd have to play against her. I can't play tennis. So then I'd see somebody who was good and I'd say, can you play against my daughter? And she would be so mad. but she would be out there beating grown men in tennis, and she was like 10 and 11 years old. And even then, like there's responsibility on her. We gave her the opportunities, but it was up to her to do the work. So I love what you said about the parents. Let's cut it there. If anybody wants to connect with you, I will link up your Instagram on I'm going to put this up on YouTube and I'll tag you on our Instagram, but people could reach out to you through Instagram. We've got powerlifters and athletes who do remote training with you. And I mentioned before you got on that you crushed the Underground Strength Con train the hands-on training portion. People were blown away, but I know you got a coach. Jeremy, anything you want to say before we shut it down?
No, I just think that message has got to be started off young, and the kids will carry that on. I've seen more of my kids make better decisions later on because of that. Like the stuff you instill in your daughter, the stuff we try to instill in our young kids, the message we try to get across, the more it gets delivered early on, the better off they're going to be. And the most successful ones that you and I see are the consistent ones, the ones that are still getting training in, the ones that are driving down to get their strength training in. You finding a way, an hour before you got to leave for Fargo to jump on a,
Love
bus
it.
and get go, that they're coming in and training. So there's no excuses. Get your training in, find a qualified person to do that, and stick with that, and it will make a huge difference in the long run.
Man, just says it all right there. Parents, come back and listen to this 100 times over. Jeremy, I'll catch you later. I'm going to do a little closeout here, buddy. Talk
All
to you
right, buddy.
soon.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, my brother.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Amazing conversation with Jeremy. Sometimes I forget these stories and the standards of excellence and commitment. I have these memories of training athletes so long ago. I started training athletes in 95. In 2002, the Underground Strength Gym began out of a house. And I don't have any stories of a successful athlete who did not train in season, who was not consistent. In fact, all of my heartbreaking stories are from the athletes who fell short of their what they could have done because they stopped strength training. And a lot of people would say that's very self-serving, Zach. You're a strength coach. Of course, you're going to say it. Well, strength training is this thing that when you stop doing it, you lose it. But if you have this longer foundation that starts at a younger age, you can get more from less. Meaning, if in middle school you started strength training regularly, well, when you're in high school, I might be able to do some really good stuff with you once or twice a week for like 25 minutes. And that reminds me, I had a kid who took fourth in the state wrestling. He was going to quit wrestling senior year. His dad had him out running after school, like 3, 4, 5 miles, wrestling all the time. He came to the gym. He was like, I hate this effing sport. I'm going to quit. I can't stand it. I said, tell me about your training. And it was like, get home. My dad's got me running, or I go to wrestling. And then at night, my dad has me running and he drives behind me in the car. Crazy dad stuff. He hated it. I said, this is what you got to do. Stop running. I said, take a break from wrestling. It sounds crazy. Wrestling season's coming up, but you've been wrestling since you were like 4 or 5 years old. You're 17 or 18. You're not going to get worse. I said, you're going to strength train here twice a week, and we're going to be in and out in about 25 minutes. And that was our average time, 22 to 25 minutes. Short, strength, easy strength style workouts, which I discussed in a recent YouTube or Instagram video. And he wound up taking fourth in the state. He broke the school record for wins. But the heartbreaking thing after that is he was burnt out. He didn't do anything in college. And we want to see athletes taking these skills and applying them to life and hopefully competing at a higher level beyond high school. It will only happen if they're not physically and mentally burnt out. And all that burnout comes from excessive sport and the body getting kind of beat up from all that stuff. And again, I wish I had success stories to share with you about lazy and successful, inconsistent and successful, excuse making and successful. I do not. If you're in the Jersey Shore area in New Jersey, go to undergroundstrengthgym.com. We're in Manasquan. If you are outside of the area, go to zachstrength.com. Free training courses good for athletics, great for adults. And then if you want education, I'm really feeling like parents need to start getting into my certifications. I think that's the best way. If you're so worried about time, how to help your kid get that strength training in at home. And I would start with the underground strength coach certification. And then if you have 5+ years of sports performance, strength and conditioning experience, then you go into the SSPC, strength and sports performance coach certification. All that stuff is linked up below. Big thanks, guys. Leave a review, and I'll see you guys over at zachstrength.com. Thank you so much.